Let me take you back to the time of Chaucer. It was a time of great events, shaping history, shaping lives. There was the 100 Years' War from 1337 to 1453. England and France fought over land and the claim to the French throne. It wasn't just a war, it changed how people lived and thought, especially during Chaucer's time. Then came the Black Death. From 1347 to 1351, a deadly plague swept through Europe. It came from rats and killed so many, bringing fear and chaos. The plague returned again in 1362, 1367 and 1370. The church was also in trouble. The Great Schism from 1378 to 1417 divided Christianity, with two popes, one in Rome, one in Avignon. It created confusion and doubt among the people. In 1381, the common people of England rose up in the Peasants' Revolt. They were angry. High taxes, serfdom, and injustice drove them to rebellion. Everyone over 15 had to pay a heavy tax, and Wat Tyler became their leader, though the revolt was eventually crushed. Now, let's talk about Geoffrey Chaucer. Born in London around 1340, he lived through the reigns of King Edward III, Richard II, and Henry IV. He is known as the father of English poetry, and his most famous work is the Canterbury Tales. It's a collection of stories told by pilgrims on their way to Canterbury. These stories reflect the diverse social, cultural, and religious life of medieval England. In 1362, a law called the Statute of Pleading was passed. It required legal proceedings to be in English, not Latin or French. This helped spread and standardise the English language. During this time, Edward, the Black Prince, son of King Edward III, became a hero. He played a major role in the early victories of the 100 Years' War, but the church was corrupt. John Wycliffe, called the Morning Star of the Reformation, spoke out against it. His followers, the Lollards, continued his message. Chaucer wrote many great works. His early poem, The Book of the Duchess, was an elegy for Blanche, Duchess of Lancaster. He also wrote Troilus and Cresseide, a story of love and fate during the Trojan War. Another of his famous works is The Legend of Good Women, where he praises noble women and their deeds. In the Parliament of Fowls, Chaucer wrote about birds choosing their mates on Valentine's Day. And in the Canterbury Tales, pilgrims gather at the Tabard Inn in Southwark, London, before setting off to Canterbury. The host, Harry Bailey, asks them to tell stories, 12 on the way and 12 on the return. Chaucer planned to write 124 tales, but completed only 24, with 20 fully done and 4 partially. Every age, they say, is like a Canterbury pilgrimage. We all are like the characters in Chaucer's tales. Chaucer's patron was John of Gaunt, a powerful man of the time. Chaucer was the first poet buried in what is now Poets' Corner in Westminster Abbey. His works reference great writers like Petrarch and Boccaccio. His poems evolved through 3 stages: French, Italian, and English. His best narrative work is Troilus and Cresseide, written in rhyme royal. His finest tale, The Knight's Tale, is a medieval romance about 2 knights, Palamon and Arcite, who both love the same woman, Emily. Their rivalry leads to battle, and though Arcite dies, the themes of fate, chivalry, and love remain. After Chaucer, there was a long, barren period, but the best poetry came from Scotland. The War of the Roses, 1455-1485, was a struggle for power between the houses of York and Lancaster, bringing more turmoil to England. In the post-Chaucerian period, poets like John Lydgate, a friend of Chaucer and a Benedictine monk, continued his legacy. He translated works and wrote poems like The Temple of Glass and Troy Book. Thomas Hoccleve wrote The Regiment of Princes, honouring Chaucer after his death. In this period, Marguerite Kempe wrote the first autobiography in English. The sonnet was introduced in England by Thomas Wyatt, and Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey, introduced blank verse. Together, they brought Italian love poetry to England. In Scotland, poets like James Thurse, who was captured by the English, wrote while in captivity, and Robert Henryson continued Chaucer's legacy with works like The Testament of Cresseide. Thus, we come to the end of our tale. The age of Chaucer was full of war, plague, revolt, and change, but also great poetry that continues to speak to us even today.